Joining us now, my friend, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, author, filmmaker. I just like to call him a Renaissance man. How are you, Newt? Good to talk to you.
I'm doing well. I'm not sure how Renaissance I am.
But
it's great to be with you, and this is going to be an amazing time. And I think you're raising points that are really very important. That for a long time, the elites told us, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. You got a little taste of it, by the way, at Ohio State, where all of the early reports, including some very serious people, kept saying, gosh, we don't quite understand his motivations. Just as they don't quite understand why the Chinese trade deficit is bad, and they don't quite understand why the Chinese stealing our intellectual properties is bad. So you have this whole series of things where the elites are just out of touch, and I think this may be the decade when we come back to grips with reality.
Well, I think, Newt, when you look at the concern that is mostly being, as far as I can tell, the concern is mostly being fomented on the left about Trump's picks for his cabinet thus far. He had the dinner with Romney last night, although my sense is that Romney's not going to become the Secretary of State. That's just my sense. I don't have any inside information. But Steve Mnuchin and, of course, Wilbur Ross, people are all saying, these are just a bunch of billionaires. How's that draining the swamp? What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, there's a whole socialist model that says if you're successful, you can't be a good person. I'll give you an example. Steve Mnuchin is one of the great financial investors in the world. His father was the head of Goldman Sachs. He was offered a chance to do that and went off on his own. He understands the world financial markets, and not as a theoretician at Harvard, not as a tenured faculty member at Yale, but as somebody who gets up every morning, watches what's happening all over the planet, watches who's doing what, understands what the Chinese central bank is doing on the value of the yuan, has followed the Japanese yen for 35 years. So you got a practitioner. I was very struck with that, as you know, I'm a big Green Bay fan, and Cliff and I own one share of Packer stock, and I was watching Rodgers play with a very, very a team that's really been badly damaged with lots of people out. And Rodgers was picking apart the Philadelphia defense, and the commentators were saying, when you can stand up from the huddle and in less than a second intuit what the other team is doing and then make an adjustment with an audible, you have such an enormous advantage. Well, guess what? You give me somebody who's actually got real experience. I mean, if they pick Mattis for Secretary of Defense, you'll have one of the smartest general officers of my lifetime, and he'll be able to do that. Mnuchin can look at the world financial markets, and he can do that. Betsy DeVos has spent a tremendous amount of money and a lot of time fighting to save poor children from unionized bureaucratic schools that fail. She's paid her dues. And that kind of person, to me, is vastly preferable to somebody who's never been in the game, doesn't understand what it's all about, but has written, 5 books on it. I may have mentioned to you one time, there's this great short essay that your listeners ought to go to called IYI, Intellectual Yet Idiot. It's by Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan. And he says basically at least 40% of the governing class on the planet is really good at writing essays and taking tests and nothing else. So they get into Harvard or Yale or Princeton because they write essays and they take tests. They study under a professor who got tenure because he writes essays and he takes tests. Then they're given a job, in the New York Times News Bureau because they can write essays and take tests. They know nothing of the real world. Those are the people Donald Trump is not appointing.
What about
He's
Romney?
Appointing people who know the real world.
What about Romney? Romney gave some very magnanimous comments yesterday coming out of that dinner. He had a press conference basically at Trump Tower. He praised the picks so far in the cabinet. A lot of them are friends of his. He said his conversations with Trump.
There's a scene in Pretty Women where Richard Gere goes up to the salesman on Rodeo Drive and says, "We need a little sucking up here." Okay? You have never, ever in your career seen a serious adult who's wealthy, independent, has been a presidential nominee, suck up at the rate that Mitt Romney is sucking up. I am confident that he thinks now that Donald Trump is one of his closest friends, that they have so many things in common, that they're both such wise, brilliant people. And I'm sure last night at an elegant 3-star restaurant in New York that Mitt was fully at home, happy to share his vision of populism, which involved a little foie gras, a certain amount of superb cooking, but was done in a populist, happy manner.
Well, Mitt, what about old Petraeus? Because I was trying to
break down on the show.
I was trying. Newt. I was trying to figure out what the frog legs on the menu meant. The frog. What is the frog? What?
Well, the frog. No, the frog legs are very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
Puss and I both had fathers who ate frog legs. I did notice that Reince Priebus in the great cheesehead tradition of Wisconsin decided not to have frog legs. In fact, I can't wait to talk to Reince and find out exactly how a guy of his background from Kenosha worked his way through the menu.
Yeah.
Luckily for them, Mitt speaks French fluently. So he could help them with the menu. He could say, "Oh, Mr. President-elect, this would be the perfect meal for you."
Escargot,
something like maybe escargot, maybe triumphant pheasant under glass. Something really good. You can just imagine. I'd love to have been just a fly on the wall.
Oh no, that would have
been so good fun.
Yeah, you don't think you don't think Romney's going to get it though, do you? Do you think Romney's going to?
I believe that. Look, I believe this choice is Donald J. Trump's. I believe he'll pick whoever he wants to. Mm-hmm. If he does, I'll support whoever he picks because it's his prerogative as president-elect. But I would certainly say the fact that they keep it open. I mean, they know that every day that goes by, the opposition to Romney grows. I just got a good note from a friend of mine saying how deeply evangelicals will oppose Romney. So every day that they let this thing hang out there, I think it's harder and more expensive to pick Romney. I think it'll be very interesting if he goes on this thank you tour and he has large crowds. If he tests out the phrase Mitt Romney for Secretary of State, it'll be very interesting to watch a Trump crowd respond because it would not be pretty.
No, I don't think the Trump supporters are big fans of the idea.
First of all, I don't want to give up on Rudy. I think Rudy Giuliani is one of the great change agents of our lifetime. What he achieved was so unbelievable in New York City that he would make a great Secretary of State because he has the drive and the energy and the toughness to take on the State Department bureaucracy. So I don't want to give up on Rudy. I would look at Ambassador Bolton as somebody who both understands the State Department and its need for reform and understands how to deal with foreign governments. So, there are a number of good choices beyond Mitt Romney.
Well, I think people are mentioning Petraeus. Is that something that would work in your mind?
Well, I think possibly. I think if you think about the people we're talking about, General Petraeus is certainly in a tradition of serving the country. I mean, he has been, despite having made a mistake, and remember, the biggest part of that mistake was that he didn't tell the truth to the FBI. Mm-hmm. Now, if you take that standard and you apply it to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and you say, okay, so if Petraeus was a 1, she's what, a 9,000? I mean, there's no comparison. But I think clearly it's one of the things that Petraeus will always carry with him. But he's very smart. He knows a great deal. I do think people question if you're going to get General Mattis at the Defense Department, whether you can have a second general in the State Department. And that's a legitimate question and kind of ironic, considering that Trump ran as somebody who's very skeptical of military involvement around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it all depends on whether these nominees are in line with Trump's worldview. I mean, they could be great people, but they might have a completely different worldview on the economy or foreign policy. I think the proof is going to be in the policies, Newt, in the end.
Yeah, well, the other part of that is one of the things you learn as a senior 4-star is you learn how to manage very big systems. And I look at a General Kelly or a General Petraeus and think, Homeland Security could use that kind of strength of management, which it has not had in the history of the department. We need somebody who's who's a veteran, who's also a very strong change agent at the Veterans Administration. I mean, there are places, it doesn't just have to be state or nothing for some of these guys, because these are good people and they're patriots and they want to serve their country.
Well, I completely agree. Newt, before we let you go, Christmas time is upon us, and the Christmas season's here. Tell me one of your great traditions when you celebrate Christmas. What's one of your favorite things to do? We're asking all of our guests this.
Well, look, one of our favorite things, Clista and I always, Clista, of course, sings at the Basilica.
Phenomenal singer.
She's part of that remarkable choir, and they have a lot of singing. They have their Christmas concert Friday night at the Basilica, and then they have singing all of Christmas week. And then after so she can't leave. We're here through Christmas Day. Then we go out to her mother's. We've done this every year, and we celebrate in Whitehall. And then we go from there down to join our daughters and our grandchildren, usually in Atlanta. And it's a moment in time to stop, take a deep breath, reconnect with family, remember what's been a great year for us, and look forward to an exciting time next year.
Absolutely.
So we do all of that.
The blessings for Christmas, and I hope we even check back with you before Christmas. Newt, I love your French accent. You should do that more. Thanks so much for being with us. Stay with us.